Hi, this is Dr. Andy. You know, some of the students that I've taught over the last 36 and a half years have arrived at my classes as empty vessels. They're eager to learn, grateful for every lesson, and it's clear that they're much deeper thinkers, more creative thinkers, more critical thinkers when they leave my class than when they arrived. Other students, just as welcome, just as impressive, arrive as vessels that are largely filled. One such example is my student Brennan. Brennan took the very first journalism class that I taught at UC Davis in the winter of 2011. I learned how to teach this class by looking over the materials of a number of my colleagues, including my colleague Greg Miller, former student of mine, which means that he's going to appear in one of these videos. Greg Miller just turned over all of his materials to me and invited me to use and adapt them as I saw fit. I discovered, for instance, that Greg Miller's journalism involves much more book reviewing than the journalism that I would do, which are more along the lines of op-ed pieces, personal essays, and then a quarter century of radio journalism as the host of a public affairs program. Brennan was in my journalism class, but he was not intent only on being a journalist. He was an ecological activist. He was very much interested in making the world a better place. He was interested in pushing this idea of recycling. How can we not only recycle the materials that we consume, but what sort of creative masterpieces could we create with those recycled materials? And he was interested in sculpture. I learned all of this on the very first day of class when Brennan introduced himself to his classmates, and as he made announcements over the course of that winter quarter about different projects that he was participating in. He was particularly adept at creating group build projects. I've learned about this somewhat from John Natsoulis, the gallerist who owns the John Natsoulis Gallery here in the city of Davis. And that is where a single artist, such as Brennan, would have an idea for a project, and then he would gather people together who are interested in contributing mostly their labor to that project so that the vision of the original artist could be realized. I think the most famous to Davisites example of this sort of work is the Compassion Bench. At the corner of 3rd and C Streets, across the street from Crapeville, one finds the Compassion Bench. And it's there to represent, commemorate, and celebrate the life and work of David Breaux, Breaux. David Breaux was known as the Compassion Guy. When he was on my radio show, David questioned the use of the word guy. Is that respectful? But he believed deeply in compassion. He wrote, with the help of others, a book that contained a great number of definitions of compassion from different Davisites who he would interview. In some ways, that book is analogous to this one. This book, this memoir, this video project that I'm putting together about my former students, my project is about gratitude, about recognizing the initiative taking and the creativity and the hard work of the students that I've taught during a long career of teaching at UC Davis. But as with David's project, It's actually the students themselves that make the contributions, and I just gather them and relay their good work. In the way that David was interested in gathering definitions of compassion from other people, not only so that they could be recorded and shared, but so that individuals would reflect on their own definitions of compassion and be ready not only to share the words, but to share the practice, to actualize such thoughts on compassion on a day-to-day basis. Sadly and tragically, David is no longer with us. But the compassion bench that Brennan and others together built at the corner of 3rd and C to recognize David's work in the field of compassion, his saint-like steadfastness in hoping to elevate, to surface the best qualities of all the people that he would interact with. That particular work is celebrated by the compassion bench that my student Brennan helped to create. Brennan has used these principles and applied them elsewhere. On his Wikipedia page, he says that he's an ecological educator, designer, natural builder, water harvester, and appropriate techie who has led a diverse array of artistic and ecological projects around the world. He is the founder of the Peace On Earthbench Movement, or POEM, an international movement that inspires youth to transform plastic waste into an artistic community gathering place. You can find out more at earthbench.org. What interesting work he does, currently living in Oakland, California. And how appreciated is Brennan for bringing that work to the Compassion Bench in Davis, California. When Brennan was my journalism student, he already had a head of steam about a great number of important projects that would go on to inform his life's work to this day. At a memorial for David Breaux, I was really touched to see that Brennan had come back to Davis, not only to celebrate our mutual friend, but also to recognize all the flowers and the photographs and the candles that had been set upon and set around the compassion bench that was a crucial part of Brennan's legacy in the city of Davis. So thank you, Brennan, for that legacy. Thank you for recognizing our friend in a permanent structure. It's now called the Compassion Corner at 3rd and C. I hope you'll check it out the next time you're in downtown Davis. And thank you for reminding instructors like me, Brennan, that we are not responsible for entirely filling the empty vessels of our students. Sometimes such a vessel just needs to be topped off with a little bit of wisdom and some instruction about writing and journalism. My name is Dr. Andy. Thanks for joining me on this particular journey today, one of 365 remembrances of the students that I've taught at UC Davis. If you enjoy this, and I just assume you do because you made it to the end of the video, please give it a like. It helps the algorithm find it for others. And I hope you'll subscribe so that you never miss another chapter of Diary of a Quizmaster. Bye-bye.